So good afternoon, everybody. This is Paula Ropoleski with Leading Age Virginia, and I'm pleased to have with us today Parasol Alliance, who is doing our webinar on the impact of COVID, planning for technology and security today and tomorrow. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and she will give the introductions.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Paula. Good afternoon, and thank you to Leading Age for inviting us to participate today. First and foremost, on behalf of everyone at the Parasol Alliance team, we hope your communities are as healthy as possible and maintaining good spirits during this time. By now, we all know that the COVID pandemic has brought massive disruptions and upheaval to industries everywhere. And among the hardest hit is the senior living field. Now that we're all several weeks into this new normal, new questions are beginning to surface about how best to utilize communication tools that might be new to your team, as well as concerns about an organization's overall security. Parasol Alliance has created and scaled our business on a virtual model from day one. We've incorporated tools and systems that allow every employee to work from home securely while maintaining high productivity and excellent communication. So we wanted to share some of our best practices for making the most of these tools, what you need to know about security and long-range technology planning, as well as recommendations for keeping your team engaged and motivated while working remotely. Joining us today are house experts on these topics. We have Amber Redman, the CEO of Parasol Alliance, Ryan Pruz, the Director of Engineering, Heather Contreras, our Director of Network and Security, and I'm Rachel Lugie, the Director of Communications, and I'll be kicking us off today. So for those of you who might be new to Parasol Alliance and maybe not know what we offer, let me just tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. Parasol Alliance is a comprehensive in-house technology solutions company exclusively serving the senior living field. We specialize in strategic planning and project management to help senior living providers effectively achieve their long-range business goals. Our mission is to bring strategy, innovation, and accountability to our clients' use of technology. What sets us apart is our approach to partnership. Our highest priority is our clients' success. That's why we begin every partnership by creating a technology strategic plan. This is basically a 3-year roadmap that can be used for project planning, resource allocation, and budgeting. Each full service client also receives a dedicated CIO and a comprehensive team of experts to execute on the projects within their strategic plan, as well as on-site and remote support. Because we exclusively serve the senior living space, we're experts in every technology aspect of the senior living business. Our board of directors is comprised of not-for-profit senior living providers that bring more than 500 years of combined aging services experience and leadership to Parasol Alliance. As for our team, with more than 95 years of combined experience in senior living, we share your passion for serving older adults. Many of our employees, before joining Parasol Alliance, worked in senior living communities in various capacities in operations, marketing, human resources, administration, and even as clinicians. Because we have a deep understanding of the aging services field and the senior living business, we've been able to hone our approach to technology planning like no other technology solutions company has before. In 5 short years, we've executed 28 strategic plans, developed over 30 senior living partnerships in multiple states, and that's all been entirely through word of mouth referrals. We're active leading age members, and we find that we have a natural synergy with not-for-profit senior living communities that also embrace a mission-driven approach to business and seek relationship-based partnerships. We truly see ourselves as an extension of our clients' team. So the objective of today's webinar is really twofold. We hope to impart some knowledge around topics that might be top of mind for senior living providers right now, as well as provide an open forum for you to ask any technology or security questions that you might be facing today. So here's what we plan to cover. We'll start by reviewing some of the frequently asked technology questions that we're receiving from senior living providers. We'll review best practices for helping your team members work remotely. We'll learn some of the security measures that you should have in place to maintain your best defense against a breach. And we'll review technology investments to ensure long-range agility and disaster management. And then we'll finish with some resources for your community before we open the floor for your questions. So we'll start by taking a look at some of these frequently asked questions that we've been receiving today from our senior living partners. People have asked us, what are the security risks for using Zoom and Slack? And are these tools HIPAA compliant? How secure is our domain if we have some people working from home, perhaps on personal devices? And what are the best tools and methods for hosting meetings, document sharing, and real-time communication and collaboration? And then people have also wanted to know, what are some of the best practices for keeping your workforce engaged while some may be working remotely? So to address these questions, we'll start by sharing some of our recommendations for keeping your team motivated when you have perhaps some people working on campus and some people working remotely. And then we'll move into a review of popular communication tools, security, and technology planning for long-term sustainability and growth. So with that, I will turn things over to Amber so she can tell us a little bit about herself and our approach for keeping a workforce engaged and motivated when perhaps not everybody's physically together in the office.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Rachel. I'm Amber. I'm the CEO of Parasol Alliance. I have about 15 years of experience working in senior living. And I'm going to be covering really briefly just some tips and tricks for motivation and how to effectively work from home. At Parasol Alliance, we have built and scaled our company on a virtual model since day one. So we have always been virtual without an office. So we wanted to offer some of our strategies and recommendations for keeping your team motivated, engaged, and collaborating while perhaps portions of your workforce may be working off-site. As Parasol has built an award-winning culture around a company that has always been virtual, we wanted to share the framework and tricks for that. These can be applied no matter how small or large the work from home team is. The key ways in which we have been successful in building our virtual company are by following these general guidelines that I'm going to talk about briefly. The first step is to develop your framework. Think about how you will communicate, what tools will you use, what are the policies that you already have that you can apply or may need to be changed or added. Next, establish the culture and expectations for your work from home teams. The most important decision you can make is communication. Having a workable communication plan in place, both across the organization, teams, and employees, is essential to building trust. In addition to communication, you can review, create, or revise your policies to lay the groundwork and expectations for your work from home culture. And lastly, accountability is what ties everything together. This is how you monitor outcomes to ensure your work from home culture is working for everyone. While this may not be the way you work as a company forever, it may be the new normal for some of your employees for the months ahead. Through this process, you may find some efficiencies and added benefits that you had not expected that will allow your company to be more agile in the future. So you can think about how to leverage this opportunity to incorporate this new work style into your company fabric. I'm going to talk about some best practices for maintaining employee motivation remotely and also during COVID. Some tips and tricks are you can encourage your employees to stick to a normal work schedule as much as possible, even when they're at home. Encourage people to take lunch breaks and just breaks throughout the day as needed. If you do need a modification to your schedule, if you have others at home, such as little ones that are out of school, you can think about planning your day around when they'll be most productive, getting up early or tackling project work during naps or after bedtime. Or another strategy is to set aside block time on your calendar if you do need to work with kids to avoid stressing out trying to do it all at once. It can help your peace of mind to know you have dedicated time to what may be your many functions at home as both an employee and a teacher. Encourage your staff to speak with their supervisor about adjusting their schedule if necessary. Again, going back to the critical piece that communication plays in setting expectations, as long as everyone is on the same page about schedules, this will greatly increase trust. Some other suggestions are to try and find a dedicated workspace to work with minimal distractions. If you can, set up your workspace with all of your tools rather than seeing it as a temporary location. When you begin for the day, think about setting daily goals by category, must complete versus to-do lists. Give employees permission to take time for themselves throughout the workday to maintain a balanced state of mind to combat burnout and fatigue. Encourage breaks outside, exercise, and ending work at the end of the day. Remember that this is impacting their professional and personal lives. You can ask your managers to check in with staff often and how they're feeling. And remember that everyone works differently, and this may be an adjustment for employees who have not worked remotely before. Again, communication is key. Be available. Nothing hurts the built-in trust in working from home more than disappearing for a few hours. You can build this trust by maintaining open communication on what you are working on, when you may need to take breaks, and what your priorities are. As I just mentioned, the keys to successful work from home are to first define the framework and tools, communicate those expectations, and then lastly, hold people accountable to the framework. If you can tie your work from home plan to your values, this is a bonus and can prevent the abuse of the structure. Again, talking about communication, making sure the expectations are set and understood, and then determine how you will monitor those outcomes. Remember to also celebrate the good news. One of the recommendations is potentially use Slack or Teams and have a recognition channel, or you can include daily wins or recognition in virtual meetings. When it comes to your team's communication, there's a few things you will want to keep in mind to introduce, or if you have already introduced, some new tools to allow your team to collaborate virtually. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan Pruce, our Director of Engineering, to lead us through this portion of the presentation.
Thanks, Amber. Hi, everyone. Like Amber said, I'm Ryan Pruce, the Director of Engineering. I'm over 20 years experience I've got supporting enterprise class systems with almost the last 10 years exclusively in senior living. And I've been with Parasol Alliance since the company was founded almost 5 years ago. So I'd like to really get started with some general tips, I guess, on choosing and maintaining various systems. So regardless of the service or application you're trying to implement, the best idea is really to keep things as standardized as possible. So, when you're looking for a new tool, you find one that fills and fits your needs, but you implement it then for everybody. It can really slow things down if you got to switch between 2 or 3 different instant messaging applications or different video conferencing applications in order to stay productive. In addition, you want to make sure they stay as up to date as possible. It can seem annoying, those applications, a lot of times it seems like they're issuing updates all the time, but in reality, those updates are issued to address, for the most part, security vulnerabilities that are discovered. So in order to keep your organization and your end users as secure as possible, you want to keep those applications up to date. And in addition, it's going to reduce, troubleshooting and problem solving time taken. It's going to reduce calls to the service desk, which, is going to make everybody happy. And it'll also streamline setup for new computers, new users that have to get set up. Whoever's doing that setup, it's going to save them a lot of time if they've got a list that never changes of what they need to get set up for those new users. And a couple of the most commonly used, communication or collaboration tools, something everybody's using right now is going to be email and phone. When it comes to email, there's 3 primary methods of access, and all of them can be used working remotely. The first is going to be the webmail, OWA, or the web-based version of the email. It's just a website that people can access to log in and get access to their email. A lot of organizations restrict it, but those restrictions can be eased or temporarily allowed for certain users if they're working from home. The other method is going to be your smartphone. It's very similar, where most email applications allow people to get email set up on their personal phones or business phones. Again, a lot of organizations restrict it to certain users or groups, but those, if you've got a temporary situation and need people working from home, those restrictions can be loosened. And then the most common is the Outlook or other email client that just gets installed and set up on a computer or laptop. And that's the one most people are using because once it's set up, it works. Whether, as long as you have an internet connection, regardless of where you're at, you're going to be able to send and receive emails. When it comes to phones, most office phones have the ability to forward calls to a mobile or other phone number. So you're always getting your calls if you need to. You can also, most enterprise phone systems have the ability for you to use what's called a soft phone, which is just an application that you install on a phone or computer, and then you can take and receive calls, from your actual office extension instead of having to forward it. In addition, most enterprise systems also allow voicemail to email. So if you are forwarding your phone number, your office number to your cell phone or some other number, you can also set up voicemail to email so you don't miss any messages that might come into your desk, and you may miss. So just some things to keep in mind, streamlining communication, those things can all help. Moving on now, talking about some video conferencing. One of the most commonly used, or if not the most widely used video conferencing application right now is Zoom. Really popular now with all the quarantining and isolation that's happening. It's kind of exploded in popularity, and it's free, which is part of the reason why. It's just, you have to keep in mind that anything over 40 minutes, the meeting's just going to end on you. It's got all the typical features you'd expect to see in a video conferencing app, chat, screen sharing, recording. Also allows you to set up meetings. People can join via phone or computer. So anybody can use it. It's real easy to use. It's actually what we at Parasol use for all of our meetings, both internal and client facing, and it's super user friendly. From a security standpoint, you may have heard about it a little bit in the news recently. There were some issues, when people first started using it with something called Zoom bombing. And what that is, initially Zoom, with its default settings, you'd create a meeting. It creates a link to that meeting. And with just the default settings, that link is fairly short. And so what was happening is people would go through and guess thousands of links, in a row. And after going through hundreds or thousands of them, they'd get lucky and end up in somebody's meeting. And once they were there, they would share their screen or share audio that was not safe for work and started causing other problems. So, but it's really easy to circumvent that. In fact, Zoom has actually required now, they've updated their software and required these settings that will circumvent it. So the solution is just to make sure there's a password set on the meeting before you send out the link. And what that does, it doesn't always require users to actually enter a password unless they're calling in. But if they connect from their computer, their link actually gets extended. The password gets embedded in the link, and then the link is so long and complicated that it can't be guessed. So that prevents that from being an issue. And Zoom has actually done a really good job recently as well with implementing other security features. They've got what's called a waiting room. So when people join the meetings, you have to allow them in. There's restrictions. You can restrict people based on email address. You can lock meetings once all your attendees are present, encryption, among other things. There's really a full feature set of security that you can implement on your meetings or your conferences when you get them set up. Keep in mind the free version is not HIPAA compliant, so you definitely want to be careful about what kind of information is being shared. They do have a version, a premium version that is HIPAA compliant, but obviously it's not free. But it's available if that's something you wanted to look into. Moving on to instant messaging. Again, most common, widely used from a business standpoint at least, application is Slack. Again, it's a pretty user-friendly, fully featured instant messaging application. You get a lot of control over it. You can set it up and create individual chat rooms, so you can separate the chat rooms by topic or by department, or however you want to separate them, whatever category you choose. You also have the ability to manage the users, so you can manage what rooms or categories individual users have access to, and who even gets to log into your community at all. You got a lot of granular control over the security and who has access. Again, it's real-time communication, but it also offers the ability to do video and audio messaging as well. So, if your message isn't getting across in text, you can just hit the call button and call somebody or do a video chat with them real time. Again, it's got all the typical features you'd expect in an instant messenger, so you can share images and documents, although you want to keep in mind that there are space considerations. There's space limitations with document sharing. It only will save so much in the chat history. And it has a lot of free apps and integrations as well. So you can, you can integrate it with Outlook and get, your free busy information, have it updated automatically, or get reminders of upcoming meetings. So it is really a helpful tool. And one of the questions we get fairly often is how Slack differs from other applications, like, for example, Microsoft Teams. And the big picture is you're not going to see a whole lot of difference. They're pretty much the same application, offer a lot of the same features and functionality. But what you're going to see different, like specifically with Teams, it doesn't get a lot of use at the free level. Most people that end up using it are people that already have a subscription to Office 365, which includes Teams. So it's already included. You don't see people usually purchasing a license just for the use of Teams. Also, Teams scales a lot better to larger organizations, whereas Slack is a lot more user-friendly and caters better to small and medium-sized businesses. From a security standpoint, Slack is definitely not HIPAA compliant. You want to kind of use it generally for low level or instant internal communications. From Parasol standpoint, we only use it internally for real-time communication between teams. We definitely don't use it if we're trying to communicate with our clients. And Slack, again, you want to try and keep it up to date just to make sure that it's got all the latest patches. But it also offers other security features as well, like two-factor authentication, and it has the ability, well, I guess something to keep in mind is they have what's called closed rooms or open rooms, and closed communities and open communities. And so if you're going to set up a Slack community, you definitely want to go with the closed version. And so what that means is it's only available to the users you specify. If it's an open community, then it's gonna show up and be available to the greater worldwide Slack user base, which obviously can lead to all kinds of problems. But with that being said, it's a great full-featured application, and we use it. It's one of our primary tools of communication. Moving on, I want to just talk a little bit about file access and sharing. There's a lot of applications out there that advertise, the ability to allow file sharing remotely. Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, stuff like that. And for the most part, they work. But for most organizations we work with, they're just not necessary. And the best bet is to keep it simple and use what you already have. Most organizations already have an existing file share in place, so when their users are in the office, we're sitting at their desk, their files are just there. They're always there, always available. They don't have to do anything. In addition to that, most organizations also have a VPN or some ability for end users to connect to their network while remote. And that's what VPNs do. It makes the end user, their experience, it seems to them just like they're on their network or at their office. And so if you can make those tools available to the end users, there's really no need to add any other application on top. It's just complicating matters. You set the users up with a VPN access from their home. Their file shares are going to look just like they normally would if they were in the office. So, and I guess, and now that I've started talking about VPN, I've kind of delved a little bit into the network side of things, which is Heather's area of expertise. So I'll pass it off to her and let her elaborate a little more on VPN and some other network and security considerations.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Contreras, Director of Network and Security. I have over a decade of experience in senior living, specializing in the field of network and security, strategy, threats, operation, and developing the most cost-effective solutions which deliver an optimal level of security. I hold various certifications such as Cisco CCNA, Certified Meraki Network Operator A+, and I'm currently working with Offensive Security for my OSCP. I believe regularly continuing your IT education. The industry will continue to evolve, so stay on top of cybersecurity developments. So that means constantly adapting. So Ryan was just talking about VPN, and that is our recommended method for connecting to corporate resources when you're not at the office. Having your employees connect to a corporate virtual private network protects your company resources that are sent over the internet. The tunnel and the data traveling through it are protected by encryption and security protocols, which keeps the data private and secure. So what do you need to know about VPN? VPN connections will securely connect you to your resources on your company network. That's how you're going to access your desktop, drives, and files while you're at your home. We recommend only installing VPN on work purchase devices, but during the COVID-19 crisis, these guidelines may have been relaxed if determined necessary by the company administrators. Things to consider when allowing VPN on non-work purchase devices include the enforcement of password protection. This means employees should be securing their device with password-protected screen lock when they're not in use to prevent anyone from accessing that device. Should be also keeping these devices secured, and that means adequately protecting them with decent security software and antivirus programs. Require that system updates are ran regularly to keep these devices current with the latest security and vulnerability patches. During this pandemic, millions of people are now working from home. And this sudden shift from face-to-face office encounters to digital communication has been a recent focus. Hackers are already targeting them with a particular focus on the vulnerabilities created by this new workforce in their remote office. Both the FTC and Secret Service have issued urgent warnings of increased phishing scams that seek to exploit this crisis. So I always say that you're only as strong as your weakest link, and this rings true during these circumstances. As businesses are vulnerable, they're as vulnerable as the least secure employee device. And this is a really bad situation if you consider that malware on one laptop of just one employee can compromise an entire company. So what are some security tactics you can deploy today? We've already covered the importance of using a company-supplied VPN and standardizing your platforms, but some other things to consider include educating your employees. Do your employees know what a phishing attempt is or how to spot one? Common indicators of phishing attempts include domain misspellings, poorly written emails with grammatical errors, or the message being sent from a public email domain. Always remember that no legitimate organization will contact you from an address that ends in gmail.com, not even Google. Another thing you can do is use your phone to confirm emails and texts. A common method used in spear phishing scams is to have a coworker request sensitive data or money via email. And the easiest way to prevent this is with a quick phone call. You can confirm these messages are legitimate. It's much harder to fake a recognized voice than an email or a text message. Consider additional security investments. COVID-19 has represented a major hit to the economy, and many businesses are reluctant to spend more money than is absolutely necessary. While the thought of buying or updating security software or upgrading equipment for your employees while they're staying at home might not feel like a priority, compare the cost of a data breach from a compromised device. Should you wish to bolster your security measures, here are some things to consider. Some companies, including Parasol Alliance, are offering security awareness training and simulating phishing testing to uncover your organization's vulnerabilities. It's critical to remember that none of these suggestions will make your company completely bulletproof, and the nature of cybersecurity is that there are no guarantees, only best practices. The best defense against security breaches is to create a human firewall, and you can do this by educating your employees. Now I'm going to turn things back over to Amber so she can share some considerations for your long-range technology planning.
Thank you, Rachel. Senior living providers may just be beginning to think about how to best learn from the COVID experience and proactively plan for the future. So whether you are considering how to plan for a future crisis with revisions to your disaster recovery plan, or how to ensure your organization is equipped for sustainability and growth in the long term, we'd like to offer some considerations as you plan to ensure that you have a comprehensive technology framework and strategy in place. These are just some things for you to think about to include when you're creating your long-range technology plan. Consider long-range business objectives, both corporate and growth-related, and how technology will support these objectives. Consider what are the resident and visitor expectations, and how are those being met both today and in the future? What is your current technology culture, and where do you want to be? And how will you support and implement these initiatives? The goal is to create a technology plan that will address a solid foundation. I like to think of it as a pyramid, as pictured on your screen. At the base are your infrastructure systems, so making sure that all of your equipment is being kept when it's end of life, is being kept up to date, including both the physical hardware and configuration. On top of that, we have the business systems, the applications you use to run your organization, maybe your medical record system, payroll, HR, dining systems, and all of those types of systems. So you want to think about, are the systems you have in place the right systems? Are they being optimized? Are you using them fully? And are there systems you don't have? Are there still processes you have on paper, perhaps? As you think about both business systems and infrastructure, you want to view decisions you're making or systems you may be implementing through a lens of security. So security is interwoven across the whole pyramid. Once you have a solid foundation with your infrastructure being updated when it becomes end of life or to fit your business growth, and you optimize your business systems, then you can think about how do you externally interact with entities outside of your organization. And then you also want to think about your residents and visitors. It's becoming more and more of a need, not just an expectation, but a need to provide support and services to the residents and the visitors in your organization. And again, all of these incorporate security and risk management. Be nimble enough to shift your workforce and resident care methods should you encounter a disaster. Your technology plan should be comprehensive to include the aspects we discussed. Through this laddered approach, you can see how the phases of the plan build on each other. The strategic planning can become your IT annual budget to ensure you're allocating the right resources to end-of-life systems and equipment and prioritizing projects and supporting company objectives. IT operations will support your day-to-day, while your strategic plan will allow you to give you a path to execute on your projects by priority. All of this feeds into your technology culture and how your staff see technology's role in the organization. Does technology enable them, or is it viewed with a fear of change? You can manage change and eventually have your staff members embrace technology with communication of a technology strategic plan and transparency into the process and decisions. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to discuss a few resources before we take questions.
Great, thank you, Amber. Yes, as Amber mentioned, as early as February, we were trying to assess what the impact of the COVID crisis would have on senior living providers. And we really focused on two perspectives. The first was, what is the impact from the operator standpoint? And then, of course, what is the impact on residents? So one of the first steps we took was to create a customized work remote plan for each of our senior living partners. These guides mapped basically how to access existing programs, systems, of course, VPN access for employees who were working in non-traditional functions, like working from home or having to rely more on the use of mobile devices to complete their work on site. The work remote plans also included best practices that we reviewed earlier for using new communication tools like Zoom and Slack to enhance communication and collaboration securely. While we're living in this time of, a hybrid where, some people are going to be working from home, others are on site, and others are just working in more non-traditional functions. We also offered to create these customized work remote guides for any senior living community for free during this time. So while perhaps many communities may be past this initial step by now, the offer still stands. If there's any organization that could benefit from a customized work remote plan, we are happy to assist with that at no charge. As for the resident impact, we are all aware with visitor restrictions in place for the foreseeable future, social engagement was going to be a challenge for providers. And we wanted to help residents stay connected with their loved ones during this time when they wouldn't be able to physically see them. Parasol Alliance has a service called Tech at Home. This is a specialized technology support team that serves the residents in senior living communities. During this time, Tech at Home is offering a free hotline open to the public, but designed specifically for older adults to receive free remote support by phone for assistance using any communication tools. These are tools like video calling, social media even, and email. Right now, our top requests are for assistance getting applications like Zoom, Google Duo, FaceTime, and even social media accounts set up on smartphones and personal computers. So basically, anyone can call this hotline and receive help to select, install, and use communication applications on your device. The hotline is open for support until the end of June, Monday through Friday, and those hours are from noon to 4 Central Standard Time, and the hotline number is 630-635-0340. Along with the hotline, we're also producing a series of short demonstration videos for frequent requests that will be available outside of normal business hours. So I would encourage people to stay tuned to Parasol Alliance and Tech at Home on social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates as new content becomes available. And of course, you can connect with any one of us. You can find Parasol Alliance online. You can access our website, or like I said, on social media, or contact any one of us directly with questions. We are here to help. We want to be a resource to all of our colleagues in the field. I want to thank you all again for your time today. We know your days are busy. Your time is precious, especially right now. We hope that the resources and information we provided to you today was helpful. And this concludes the presentation portion of today's program. So I think we're ready to open the floor for questions. So with that, I'll turn things back to Paula. Thank you.
So if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or if you wanted to unmute yourselves, we'll let you do that as well. Any questions?
Hello, my name is Joe Shear with Brainerd Millwoods.
Hey, Joe.
So we are currently getting a VPN in place, but for now, I guess my curiosity question is, how secure did you feel a remote desktop portal is for connecting from someone's home to their desktop here at work?
So I guess I can start with that. In general, RDP, the protocol, is not considered very secure. If that protocol is opened up on the firewall, it becomes a huge target for people trying to compromise networks, and they'll concentrate a lot of time and energy on trying to brute force passwords that they might be able to come across that will provide them access to that RDP portal. RDP by itself is definitely not recommended, but if you're using a VPN first, that definitely changes things because the VPN tunnels are generally encrypted. Correct me if I'm wrong, Heather.
Nope, that's 100% correct.
Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if not, you have their emails if you have something afterwards, but I want to thank everyone from Parasol Alignment. Amber, thank you so much for your team and all their great information and all that you provide for all the senior living communities that y'all work with. And for Rachel, thank you especially for putting all this together for us. We thank you very much. And that concludes our day's webinar.